Hello and welcome to the first episode in this 15-minute chess lesson series. And this first episode is about the power of an outpost. So some of my videos have gone pretty long, so I will try to keep them short with these 15-minute lessons. All right, so an outpost. For those of you who are not familiar with that, an outpost is an area, a square that you can move a piece to that will give it an advantage. Usually it's in enemy territory. It doesn't have to be, though. It could be on your side of the board as well. But in this position, a good outpost would be to jump this knight up here to d5. You could also move it to b5. And so an outpost is usually someplace you can move your piece where it's protected by a pawn and it cannot be attacked by enemy pawns. So let's take a look at the analysis here and what it says in relation to an outpost. So with white to move here, knight to d5 is the best move by far. So if we take a look at that, once the knight jumps up here into this outpost, which is protected by this pawn, and there are no pawns that can attack this knight because this e-pawn has been pushed forward, leaving this backward pawn. So there's a weakness here. The e-pawn's no longer covering d5. So the knight jumps in here to this fine outpost where it controls a lot of squares all around the board from d5. So, just a great spot to move, and white is ahead almost +3. And if we look material-wise, he does have an extra pawn, I believe. Let me see. Actually, white is even behind a pawn here, but because of this outpost, basically white is almost winning here. He'll attack here. He's threatening a possible capture of this knight. Then if the rook recaptures, he can fork the rook and the king. So a lot of threats using this outpost. All right, to keep this moving along, I'm going to show you some examples of two games using where an outpost is used to great fashion here for an advantage. All right, so this first game is by Bobby Fischer with the white pieces. And if we do a quick review and see what the accuracy rating is here, Bobby Fischer played 92.8% accuracy versus 80.6% for his opponent, Gaudio, well, maybe Alicio Gaudia or Gaudio Alicia. Let's see, or Alicia. Details. This was played in 1960 by Bobby Fischer in Argentina. So let's take a look here. The game begins with e4, c5, the Sicilian. So both sides just develop here. The knight moves up to control the center. The pawn moves forward to allow the bishop to develop. So these are standard moves in the Sicilian, the open Sicilian here. Fischer tries to take control of the center. His opponent captures, recapture. The knight attacks. Fischer develops a knight to defend. And then we have a6 here, the Najdorf variation. So Fischer plays this bishop to c4 move here, lining up on the f-pawn. So the opponent blocks that here with this e6 move, and now we have the Scheveningen variation. Maybe I didn't pronounce that 100% correctly, but that is when this e6, d6 pawn structure is formed in the Sicilian. So Fischer just retreats back. That way, if b5 is played, his bishop is not under attack. It's already retreated to b3. And sure enough, this move is played. So Fischer ignores that, castles. His opponent lines his bishop up here on the long diagonal, aiming down through the center and towards Fischer's king side. So now Fischer ignores that, playing f4. But it looks like that's a mistake, that it would have been better. Let's take a look here. Rook to e1 would have been better to fortify this pawn, which is now under attack by 2 pieces here. So, by doing this, it looks like that pawn should not be captured, but black can just develop. So let's see what happens. He develops this way, but it looks like it would have been better to develop to d7. So now, after this missed opportunity, we have Fischer capturing, bishop recaptures, the knight, or excuse me, the pawn pushes forward towards the knight here. So instead of breaking open the center with the king stuck there, the opponent pushes his pawn forward, trying to keep the center closed. But this has created an outpost on d5 for Fischer's pieces. So let's see how he takes control of this outpost and uses it to his advantage. So the computer recommends an immediate bishop to g5, pinning the knight to the queen. But here we have bishop to e7 in response, and it looks like h6 would have been better, because now Fischer can play this move and try and get rid of this defensive knight here. And that knight is also covering this important d5 square. So it looks like it would have been better to retreat the knight back, but we have a check here. So Fischer moves his king out of the check, and we have castling, and now capture of that knight, which was doing an important job of covering d5. So bishop captures. The bishop jumps in here first to clear out this bishop, although the computer says an immediate knight to d5 would have been better. But now Fischer captures, the rook recaptures, the queen lines up here, putting pressure on this pawn and also covering this d5 outpost square. So the rooks line up, and Fischer just ignores that, jumping into the outpost here. And so white is ahead by 0.7 here. Now, it looks like the best response would be queen to d8, but, well, he plays that. So now it's saying queen to a5 would have been better. Anyway, moving on, we'll show you how powerful this outpost is. So Fischer plays this move to prevent the rooks from jumping down here on the 7th rank. Why didn't they play that earlier? Let's see. Oh, because the queen is under attack. So once the knight jumps up here attacking the queen has to move. So we have a retreat. This pawn pushes forward, preventing counterplay by the rooks. The bishop backs up here, trying to avoid the possibility of the pawns being broken apart. Although, if the knight captured, he would give up this great knight and the queen could recapture. All right, so now we have the rook moving here to counterattack on the queen side, although rook to f2 is recommended by the computer. So the game continues with this move, blocking in this bad bishop even more. And now we have a4 being played. Fischer goes for counterplay and rook to b8. But now knight captures and Fischer's opponent resigns here. So why does his opponent resign after this move? Let's take a look. And what should his opponent have played? It looks like it would have been better just to capture this pawn. The b pawn should have just captured the a4 pawn. Because now, after capture, queen captures. Well, queen to d5 attacks the rook. And there is a check here on the king. So we have a fork. So the king would have to move, and then the rook would be picked off. So in the end, not only was that knight very strong on this outpost on d5, but once that knight was gone, the queen was able to jump into the outpost, forking the king and the rook here. So, a short game by Fischer, 23 moves, and pretty interesting use of the outpost here on d5. All right, one more game here, and this game features Mikhail Botvinnik, former world chess champion, versus Jan Hein Donner. And this game took place in 1963 in Amsterdam. All right, so let's take a look at this. First, we'll review the game and see what the score is here. So accuracy rating, 97% for Mikhail Botvinnik with the white pieces versus his opponent, 90.3. So a high quality game here. And let's see what Botvinnik does with the Power of an Outpost. All right, let's see here. The game begins with c4, the English opening. So we have knight to f6. Botvinnik responds, developing his knight as well. So both sides are just developing pieces, fighting for the center. So this d5 move just helps control the center. Botvinnik fianchettos his bishop. He's ready to castle on the king side. His opponent develops the bishop as well, also getting ready to castle. We have castle, castle, and this move, b3, fortifying this unprotected c-pawn. And now we have b6, getting ready to fianchetto the other bishop here. All right, so bishop to b2, lining up on the center and the king side. This bishop lining up as well on the center and aiming at white's king side. So an exchange in the middle of the board. The pawn is pushed forward. We have another exchange of pawns. And now bishop lands on c5, aiming at the king side. So the knight repositions here, jumping towards the center and fortifying this other knight. So one knight could jump forward, then the other one could jump in behind it. So now this knight does the same here, jumping towards the center. Computer prefers a retreat by this knight, but the game is pretty even so far. So a3 to prevent any unexpected attacks by the bishop or the knight jumping to b4. So this knight retreats back, and now we have an attack on this bishop. So the bishop retreats to e7, and now knight to d4. The knight jumps in the center. So an exchange of bishops here, and the queen moves off the back rank, connecting the rooks, lining up on the c file here. White jumps his queen up here, getting it off the back rank where the rooks may connect as well. So black tries to take control of this c file. We have white fighting for the c file as well, attacking the queen. The queen moves, and now white moves his queen as well, blocking this check by black's queen. And knight to d5, jumping into the center of the board. So pawn moves up attacking, and now we have this knight retreat. And here, b5, creating an outpost for the knight on c6 here. All right, so a6 is played, trying to knock this pawn out to get rid of this outpost for the knight, to prevent the knight from jumping forward here. Now, if we notice, white has also given black the opportunity of an outpost square on c5. So let's see how this continues. We have the knight jumping into the outpost, threatening an attack on this unprotected bishop, forking the king and the rook. So the bishop retreats back, still covering the e7 square, and a6 is played. That way, if the pawn is captured, we have a recapture, and the knight is still protected by this pawn on the outpost on c6. So capture, capture, rook exchange. Black tries to exchange off the other pair of rooks, but white avoids that. So now the knight retreats back here, and we have this other knight moving forward. So now black has taken up this outpost on c5, and white has the outpost on c6. But whose outpost will be stronger? Now white pushes the e-pawn to e5, creating another outpost square on d6. So rook to c8, attacking the knight here. And now this rook takes control of the open a file. So the rook moves up, trying to cover the 7th rank. But we have this move here, attacking the queen. All right, so the queen captures, knight captures, rook captures, and knight captures the pawn. And here, Botvinnik's opponent resigned. And if we look at how the game may have continued, the computer gives knight up here to c7, knight to c8, attacking the rook. The rook moves, knight jumps back to the outpost on d6. Bishop captures, pawn captures, attacking the knight. The knight moves to this outpost on d5. But then queen to d1, attacking the rook. And we would have a game with queen and bishop versus 2 knights and a rook. And Botvinnik is +2 ahead here, and 2 passed pawns as well. So, this would be pretty tough to try and withstand this against the former world chess champion. So his opponent resigned. But I hope you enjoyed the use of the outposts here. So if we go back a little bit and we check, we see how white just jumped into the heart of the position here with this knight to c6 move. All right, well, before the video goes too long, I may have gone over 15 minutes, so I better end it there. Thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video. And if you subscribe, check out more of the about 450 plus videos available. Also, feel free to leave comments, suggestions, any requests for videos that you would like to see in the future. If there's something specific you would like to learn more about. All right, well, thank you for watching, and have a super chess day.